Thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. I need to get to some other sheets, but I'm really enjoying these islands, and I want to take a look at some different aspects of them. In this one right here, I used a little bit more pigment ink, in terms of adding some additional fog into the scene. What I was thinking about is kind of some moonlight, kind of reflecting off of a watery surface, probably the ocean. But it's where you see kind of the, relatively lower lying fog, on the water's surface, and you see these kind of formations kind of rising up from them. You don't have a complete kind of eradication of the bottom portions of it, which represent kind of a thicker fog, but, it's a little bit more translucent in here, but I think you still get that idea of this kind of fog kind of enveloping this whole system right here of islands. With the use of the pigment ink and this kind of impression little trick that I do of just wiping off some of the base of these objects that are going to receive that pigment ink application later, which kind of expedites things. You'll see what I'm talking about when if you watch the video, but basically I just take a paper towel and wipe off the bottom of the stamp before, making the impression, okay? And I don't know, I really like that type of look right here. I feel that adding that little fog in between things like that gives the scene kind of a dreamier look to it. And I don't know, having that type of view like that, and where the viewer kind of becomes aware of the space in between the objects, I think it's really kind of a mesmerizing type of look. Everyone likes, looking at, a lake, with kind of steam rising off of it. There's something to kind of that awareness of that space, and that light hitting that moisture in the air makes us aware of that kind of space. So anyway, fun little scene to do here. Very simple in terms of my color scheme. There's a touch of this bluish tint to it, I think, because I just didn't clean off my stylus tool before applying the gray and black in here, and that's all I used to create this grayscale little world here. So very easy to do, very simplistic, and I think very effective. So if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it. If you have any comments or questions, drop us a note in the comment section below. And as always, in the Show More little tab pull down below this, these videos, you can find more information on both the scene and the tools that were used to make it, and on the company in general. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Okay, let's try something again with these island stamps. I want to move on to another plate, but I really want to explore these further. I want to do something where it's like one of those scenes where you have kind of the set of land masses, and they're rising up from the kind of the clouds or something like that. Where there's a low-lying fog or, cloud mass. In this case, these islands wouldn't be so tall where they would be clouds, so it would be just kind of more of a low-lying fog. Low-lying meaning, I don't know, maybe maximum, 500 feet or something like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this moon kind of coming up from the horizon. Okay, let's see, which way should I do this? Should I do it more central? Let's do it central. I did my last scene where it was a little bit more off-center. And we'll use a lot of pigment ink in here, but we'll try to expedite the process a little bit. I like to soften the edge around my moon somewhat with some pigment ink, but you can kind of expedite that entire process by kind of just dabbing off the ink to begin with a little bit. So while there are variations in kind of the grayscale quality of this scene done in stippling dots. You can kind of move it along a little bit and actually have some grays instead of just all black. You can stamp this out in like a color too, like a dark blue or something like that. But I would go with something fairly dark because the scene, while moonlit and blanketed in a layer of fog, will be, you know, reasonably darker. So, if we're going to add a bunch of tone into this, then we want there to be enough definition within that design structure, okay? So anyways, if I stamp this moon too light and then I apply light tones right over the top of it, we won't be able to see kind of the forms of it anymore. Okay, so we have that going on. Now let's create a horizon line. Let's see if I can figure this out here just by folding over my piece of paper. I'm going to fold this to where that kind of roughly matches up with that line. And about like so. Maybe underdo it slightly so that you don't have a kind of a white gap in between surface, water surface, and sky. Okay, so something like that. So I can see a little bit of the forms of the design right here showing. You can use, yeah, you can see it a little bit right there. So it kind of sticks out, and that'll be our horizon line. Okay. Kind of a, you know, I don't know, you've probably done this before, but this is, if you haven't, this is kind of a fun technique of creating a horizon line and a, I don't know, it's usually a body of water surface. It could be a horizon out in the distance in a desert or something like that, you know, something that doesn't have a lot of change of terrain. I guess if you do want to change of terrain, you can always cut a piece of paper, you know, to the curve you want, or you can use something like a paper towel or something like that. Okay, so let's just keep this simple. Let's go grayscale on this one. I have a little bit of black on this stylus tool here, but that will be fine because we'll use black on this as well. Okay, I'm always taking my stroke and starting it from the outside and not pressing down real hard. It's just touching it and going, okay? See that? You're just touching it to the paper. So you're not putting any pressure on your tips, and that way your tips won't shred on you because it's such a light touch, okay? See, I don't get a stroke very visible at all. It's almost invisible, but you just keep going with it, okay? And you can see that kind of that streak forming. This is just kind of a preliminary coating too. We'll add on some more tone and color, perhaps. I don't know, maybe we'll go with a warm tone or something. I don't know, let's see what this grayscale looks like first. Okay. Kind of want to make a pretty clear, you know, definitive edge up here, so I'm making this one a little bit darker. You can kind of see what's going on though. You want to keep some streaks going and leave it a little bit more kind of irregular like that. You know, don't just tone in everything to the same distance, but have it streaky like that, and I think that gives it kind of the idea of it looking a little bit more like water, okay, by having it streaky. So don't rush these streaks. Just see, I'm just staying in one spot. I'm just pulling that color over. Okay. All right, and then you just kind of flip this around. A little bit awkward here. Let's do this right here. See that kind of horizon line? Look how easy that is. When you're doing this type of thing, you're kind of creating your own design in a way. And it's a design, you know, of a body of water that will be different every time, so you'll get a lot of variation. And in many ways, you're just in complete control of it because it really develops slowly when you do it in this fashion, and it becomes very easy. It doesn't happen in 2 seconds, but you don't want it to. The longer it takes, and we don't want it to take forever, but the longer something like this takes, kind of in concept, the more control you have over it because you have a lot of time to kind of vary a certain look in an area. Is there more ink? Is there less ink? Whatever. Okay, so that's a good kind of base layer. You see what's kind of going on there. And then let's bring in some tone around our moon. Is it rising or setting? It's up to the interpretation of the viewer, I guess. Could be anything. Okay, but I am bringing in some of this tone into that formation so that the moon will become the lightest thing in the scene. So you have to take the Eerie around it and make it darker. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go to black ink. Let's take our mask off here again. Get it repositioned. Okay. You don't need to hold this mask when you're working it down here, you know, only up here on the kind of the horizon area. Okay. Now I'm going to leave this a little bit underdone because I need to know where the position of the islands is going to be. So, you know, I'm going to add in some shadows and whatnot, and then we'll figure out where to put in that that fog. Okay, so see that? It's a nice horizon there. These islands will be backlit with the moon in the background like that. Most of the scenes that I do are backlit because you'll have some kind of sky figure within the scene, you know. Okay, something like that looks pretty good. Now let's take a look at some of the islands. Yeah, actually, let's put a little bit of a vignette around here. My tip became a little delaminated here as I'm talking about kind of taking it easy on them. These tips that I'm using are approximately 10 years old though, so they've given me a really good lifespan. I'm not sure if there's a way to really glue it back on, maybe. But I can accept a really 10-year lifespan for something like that. What other kind of media or tools last that long? Brushes, you know, in terms of applicators. Okay. All right. Easy scenes for sure, but I think, you know, rather dramatic in terms of the look of them. That's what I'm always going for in designs. I want something I don't want to fuss, when I'm doing designs. I might, there might be kind of conceptual things that, that I'm considering in a composition, but for the most part, I want there to be, a lot of variation and kind of just different options that aren't necessarily one better than the next, just different, so that you can do the composition again if you want to and go with that variation and have it look equally as good. And just different. Okay, now we have these islands in here, but just that little extra step here, what I'll do is I'll take just a paper towel, this paper towel like that, and what I'll do is I'll kind of wipe off the bottom of it so that the impression at the base of it is lighter, and that will be kind of the beginning of this representation of fog. Right? Okay. I can use the same island, but flip it around and have it coming in from this way if I want to. Let's see, let's go with this one. This is a tag and peel on my acrylic blocks, by the way, if you don't know that, what that is. It's tack and then the apostrophe N. and then peel. You can find it, this type of stuff, in the information section on our website, but I mean, there's all kinds of ways to use unmatted stamps, and this one's a pretty good way. I have several blocks with the tack and peel on it. Okay, I'm going at a diagonal right here just so it fits on this block right here, but see this right here, it has that tackiness, and for your unmounted system. A lot of you use, positioners like Misty or something like that, and you can use things like Aleene's, tack it over and over, or something like that. Okay, so when you do this, if you want that fog to be kind of around, just the different imagery, then kind of remember to do the same type of treatment on all of them, all of the different figures. I'm going to taking a little bit off the top too. Okay, so go about like so, maybe. Finding that with these islands, you can kind of position them anywhere. It really doesn't matter. I think they look just fine. I don't kind of come off of one and think, oh man, I should have stamped that there. I should have used the other one. And it doesn't seem to really matter. Which is a good thing. That's what we want. We want just to keep moving forward with our pieces, right? It's more fun that way, at least. To not have to really worry about anything. There's just different looks, I guess, different compositions. Okay, wipe that off a little bit. The fog won't be too much around this one. If it's a real small island, if it's kind of farther back, well, maybe we'll make it a little bit farther back. The distance, say something like that. Okay. Put another one out here. I'm thinking something right in here, huh? I might need another block. something a little bit longer and narrow. What it would be good for, other than something like this, I don't know. Maybe like a tree trunk or something. But we'll make do. I do have a really large block, but I don't like stamping, too small of an image on, a gigantic mount. Usually, unless I have to. Sometimes I have to because I don't have different shapes. Like if I'm at a demonstration somewhere, convention, I don't take all my blocks. Okay, let's go with something like this. We'll come in here. It's kind of like that little passageway, huh? For a ship to kind of enter and navigate around these little aisles. Okay, now we know where everything is. I was going to add some kind of shadows on the base of these, but maybe I'll just go with some pigment ink or something like that. I think these look okay, but let's do something. Let's kind of frame this off a little bit more. We have some really strong dark shapes in here, okay, with the islands. So I like to kind of match that level of value when I'm doing my scenes, just to kind of frame things off in something as dark as the darkest area or object within a scene. So it doesn't have to be too dark though. But let's check it out here. See if that kind of starts to kind of bring the scene together a little bit more. I'm just kind of tapping that to build up that ink. Sometimes if I wipe it like this, it kind of starts removing some of that ink, especially if the inks are really thick, like most dye-based inks are. Marvies are a little bit thinner, or quite a bit thinner. But that gray was that memento. So that kind of frames the scene off a little bit by kind of tipping the edges like that, a little bit darker. And we'll do the same thing down here. You kind of have to build it up, kind of build up those little beads of ink like that, just in a nice kind of tapping motion like this. And I don't want a bunch of these shapes like this, these oval shapes, so what I do is I kind of tap some in, then I kind of blend it out like that. But I'll build it up a little bit first with tapping. Okay. You just have to kind of get a feel. A lot of people ask me about different types of inks, and I haven't used a lot of different brands out there. I mean, I have over the years, but with all the brands that are out there these days, I haven't used a considerable amount of them. But most of them, from what I've found, are fairly similar and consistent. I am giving these islands a little bit of a shadow. I just decided I would, just to kind of anchor them down slightly. But most inks are a little bit thick in viscosity. And most work about the same. As I said, Marvies are a little bit different. But you do not need a certain brand. It's always just use, kind of my recommendation is usually to use whatever brand you have of your certain inks. And if you are going to buy additional ones, just, kind of supplement. And I wouldn't get too brand specific, there's a certain type of hue or value that you like more in one, brand than the other. I would get that. There's no reason, people like things matching, I know, but and usually that's a good way to start off. You kind of match things. You have a good set. There's no, duplication, overlap. But after you start getting some, it's really just, it's better to go off of kind of preference and color preference than a brand preference. Or just simply that you already have a bunch and you feel kind of, you know, I don't know, set, in, the brand that you have to go with. But inevitably, when you start using things over time, you're going to really want to use the ones that the colors that you favor the most. And, I don't know, the colors, the value of them, the intensity of them, and, you just might as well go with, the one that you prefer, aside from any brand specifics. Okay, that is your grayscale, and I'm trying to think if I want to add a tinge of a different color in here, maybe. We kind of cooled things down in the previous video using, a little bit of a blue tone. That has a nice look to it. I don't know, maybe I won't use anything. Maybe I'll just go with, some of that pigment ink in here and really kind of give it that kind of muted, foggy, light, moonlight on the moisture kind of look. Alright, I found 2 pads when I was organizing my kind of warehouse space, and they look like they're pretty good, as far as having the consistency that I really like, which is a little bit drier, or a lot drier, than brand new. And they've been sitting around probably for 8 years without being used. Okay, this is a Q-tip. I want it generally kind of shredded like that, but that one really shreds, so let me switch to this other side here. Yeah, there's still quite a bit of ink in this one here. I think this other one was a little bit drier. There's really good consistency to it. Yeah, I don't know. Looks like they both have a pretty decent amount in there when I when I really tested it out like that. Maybe I tapped a little bit lighter when I was checking them out the first time, but anyways, just kind of really take off a lot of ink to where one tap you almost can't see anything at all, and that gives you a lot of control over this type of application. Okay, where do we add things like mist and fog to create that kind of look within a scene? Well, I like to do it where light meets dark. Okay, so you have kind of this lighter area where it's meeting this darker, any type of area around in here where it's very light, and the island is, it's a pretty good place to apply this. Okay, let's see if we can zoom in here and get a little bit of a better look view. Okay, now see, when I start tapping this, it's applying there, but it's very light, so you can't see anything because it's white on light or white on white. But what I do is I start taking it into the scene like that, and now I'm going into where light meets dark. And you see that that little area of mist starting to form, right? And inevitably you're going to put too much if you're doing it like I am, a little bit fast, so I just kind of tap it with my finger like that, and it removes some of it. It comes right off. Alright, now this is glossy cardstock. It'll work a little bit differently on matte cardstock. You could have done this scene on matte cardstock too. If you're doing that on matte cardstock, I would generally recommend, I think it works really good with a coated matte cardstock, okay? But doesn't necessarily need that. You can use all kinds of different papers. The ink application feels a little bit differently because things are a little bit more absorbent when you don't have that glossy coating, okay? Anyways, can you see where I'm starting to apply it? Light meets dark, and then you get that kind of misty, cloudy feel to it. And what you're doing, what we're doing when we're doing this type of thing is you're adding kind of this atmosphere. And to me, that atmosphere, something like that, really comes about when kind of you're made aware of the space in between the objects. We're always focusing on the impressions, the objects within a given space, as far as the illusion of, space goes in a scene or whatever, or stamped figure. But when you're doing something like this, you're saying that there is moisture in the air, okay? And you're seeing that that moonlight is reflecting off of that moisture, and that way you get this, you know, this visible fog, okay? And I think that's what really gives scenes, or can give the scenes, a nice kind of mood and atmosphere. It's when you're really aware of the things in between. That's why, like at sunset, you know, things are, it feels different when you're kind of out there. It's because, you know, in high noon light, you know, it's kind of more of a white light, so you don't, you know, you're not really aware as much of like things like moisture in the air, dust particles, whatever, you know, unless it's really thick. But when you get kind of golden light shining on it, you know, in that golden hour, photographers call it, you have that golden, whatever, orange types of reflective light shining off all this these little particles all around you, and you feel more kind of enveloped in all of that. Or it's there during the daytime too, but you just don't see it. You're not really quite as aware of it. So to see this right here, where light meets dark. See, I'm not putting it over here. This is kind of dark meets dark over here, so I wouldn't put it over here, but kind of right in these areas like that. You're kind of putting that fog, and it's kind of creating that nice atmosphere, right? It's kind of becomes more kinesthetic, you know. We're working with visuals all the time, you know, in stamping. And this is visuals, but it feels different, you know, when you put that in the air, because what you have is whoever's looking at your card, it kind of puts them into that environment, you know. So you can put some up here because there's still light meets dark, but I can't really put it over here because it stands out a little bit too much, you know. It's where the light is reflecting, so it has to be kind of a slightly more lit area. If you want a kind of a thicker fog, then you go with a little bit more opacity. See, then I'm putting on a thicker layer of, you know, that white. You know, let's see it right in here. It's not too foggy, right? But if you want to make it foggier out there in the distance, then you just go on with more pigment ink. If you put too much, just wipe it off. Or dab off, you know, the amount that you want off. It's never a problem. See, I don't want that there. Just wipe it right off. And it comes right off. Well, kind of. There we go. But it has its own look, doesn't it? It's kind of more, I don't know, mystical, magical, kinesthetic, you know, basically. Let's put a lot of it right in here, huh? Let's make it a little bit more opaque. This white pigment ink dries darker, or rather, more translucent, transparent. It moves it kind of closer and transparent, you know, than what it looks like when it's just applied. So you have to kind of go with a little bit more than you think you need. You can always kind of wait for it to dry, you know, and take a look at it and apply more if you want to, but I generally apply a little bit more than I think that looks, you know, the best. Just because I know when it dries it's going to kind of disappear a little bit. Not completely, you'll still have the effects of the translucency, but just kind of apply a little bit more. So, if you kind of get this down, and believe me, it's really not hard, but if you have too much ink on here, it does become a harder, kind of more precarious exercise. When you have very little on and you're tapping very little off with any given tap, it becomes much easier. So have a little bit of patience when you first start doing it. Don't really take off a lot of ink. And then when you start applying it, don't expect that to look like that instantly. but it's kind of just done with that repetition, and it'll come around. Now, yeah, you might take off too much ink, but then you'll get a feel for it, you know, for how much you should kind of take off. Now I'm kind of softening up that area around my moon, and it becomes a little bit more glowing by doing this. And that's why kind of when I, you know, stamped it out too, I took a little bit of that ink off so that inherent within the impression there would be a little bit of variation, but inevitably you kind of have to add a little bit more. Let's go on that horizon a little bit too, maybe. Put a little bit of this pigment ink on that horizon, right around the moon. Something like that. So you can get that feel. Look at that cloud bank in there, huh? Isn't that fun? I have this quote stamp. I'm not sure if it'll fit in here. You know, it would be done as kind of an afterthought, but, you know, if I did this again, I would probably leave more room if that quote stamp doesn't fit. But I have this one scenic sentiment that says, Moonlight is sculpture. And I think this would be a good one for that. It does look like, you know, these kind of sculpted forms, and you know, within that fog. Now, let's see. Anyways, now on this thing right here, I mean, we could put ourselves on this perch overlooking this whole bay area too. I can, you know, do something with these trees again, and that would look really nice, I think. Or we can just leave it as is. There's something a little bit more. And there's something different about it. It's like we're looking from a airplane or something like that. Wouldn't that be kind of interesting to have this kind of portal type of, you know, cutout, you know, where you're looking into it? Or that'd be cool in a card if you had this cutout and this was on the inside and you see this island that you open it up and it's, you know, scene would be kind of neat. But this would look good too, kind of in the foreground like that, really dark, kind of versifying black. I'm somewhat tempted, you know, here's the other version of that. I don't know, maybe I'll just leave it as is. Maybe I'll take a look at a quote, and if I decide to use it, I'll do it. If not, then no. But let me pause and go see that if I can find that quote here. Okay, this is the length of it right here. Of course, it would be the opposite, but just looking at it in terms of positioning. Centered, I don't think it looks good. There's room in here, I'm not sure. I could put it down here, and I think it would look okay. But I don't know if I want to do this or not. It'd be kind of an afterthought. It's kind of dark in here if I stamped it out in black. One of the things I like doing is I like stamping out in white. But let's just leave it as is. Okay. Here's a little sailboat down here I can put. Maybe not. The great unknown. Alright, here's a white gel pen. I really like that look there. I've always lived in California. Not necessarily, and remember, not everywhere in California is next to the ocean, but typically lived around there, and anytime I'm passing by kind of along the coast, driving along there, and I see kind of the moon out there, I really feel compelled to stop and take a look. I don't see this, you know, but that's what's nice about stamping. You can kind of make something a little bit more, you know, kind of moments, you know, kind of a little bit more ideal than maybe what you would happen to see by chance whenever you're passing by kind of an overlook like this. This reminds me of, the mood of it reminds me of somewhere like Big Sur or something like that. Along PCH. Okay, now I'm just kind of Oops, if I've been working off there, I apologize. Haven't been doing enough videos lately. But I'm kind of working from the lighter areas out, and I'm kind of dissipating the tapering off the density of these white dots so that there's more dots in the lighter area, and then as it moves out towards the darkness, the space in between the dots gets a little bit more spread out, so it kind of naturally tapers off like that. I don't know, I mean, this is fog here, and this represents more of like a specular light, you know, light kind of shining off of the water, which you wouldn't see if it's blanketed in fog, you know, over it, you know, but I don't know. I like it. I think it looks really cool, you know, having these little kind of detailed little accents in something like this. So I use it. You don't always have to go with kind of what, in theory, you know, something would be like. You can just do it because it looks good, or you can do it because, you know, for us, because it's fun. You can put a little bit of highlights, silver line clouds type of thing in here. Okay, let's see what we have here. How does that look? Does it look fairly radiant? I don't know. I think it makes it come alive a little bit, you know, more. I thought it looked okay just in the impressions themselves, but, you know, you had that little pigment ink application, and most of us have some sort of pigment inks because we've done embossing, so. But if you don't, you can get like a pad like that, and as you can see it, these ones have been in storage, but even if they don't, they've been sitting around, you know, in a box out in the garage for, you know, 8 years, and it was heavily used before it because it came out of my demonstration box. But I don't know, these things last forever. Now, if you're out in Arizona or something like that, you might want to put it in a Ziploc bag because it's more arid. But look at what it did, you know. I mean, I kind of expedited this kind of light at the bottom, darker on the top process by, you know, blotting off some of that ink off the bottom before I made the impressions, okay? Then you just go back in and you reiterate that idea with some additional pigment ink in here. It kind of makes these two-dimensional objects seem a little bit more three-dimensional by having that little accent of lighting on them. You know, as they say, it kind of turns, you know, an object in space. It looks, you know, three-dimensional when you treat different areas of those objects differently than other areas on the stamp. So over here you don't have any kind of pigment ink application, but over here you do. Over here is in a little bit of shadow. This one's in light. Yeah, so you get that dimension, and hopefully, you know, a little bit, you know, it looks like there's some distance in between, you know, your closer objects and your more distant ones. Get that little glowing light around that moon with a little bit of pigment ink. There's a little bit down here on the horizon as well. So that horizon from over here to over here becomes different in terms of the tapering of it, but then I just knocked it back a little bit. As light as it was, I knocked it back and made it even lighter. So you get that kind of same kind of atmospheric type of look. Anyways, okay. You know, I'll do this scene again one of these days with that Moonlight as sculpture. I think that would look really good. But I'll leave room for it next time, or I'll have a specific area kind of planned out for it. So, okay. Hope you like the islands in the moonlight, or islands, fog and moon, something. I don't know. I'll figure out a title for it later on.